The context. Leaflit is a VTuber who debuted back on June 11th, 2020, and is the founder of the Angel Sword Studios company, a company focused on producing content set in its own universe. The drama would begin on July 9th, 2026, when Leaflit posted a 30-minute in-depth explanation of an upcoming budget VTuber system, which would later be released in an alpha state on the 14th. This system advertised itself as a lightweight Gen AI model creator that allows a user to essentially create and rig an animated PNG tuber from scratch. Now, given that Gen AI in general is a very heavily debated topic in and outside of the VTubing community, the initial post would end up blowing up, with both very vocal supporters and opposers discussing Leaflit, her project, and the usage of Gen AI in the VTubing community. Because of how broad and varying each side's reasoning is for either supporting or opposing Leaflit's project and the use and/or reliance on Gen AI as a whole, we'll divide each side into its own respective section for the purpose of this video. The supporters. Ultimately, supporters of the project and Gen AI usage argue for increased accessibility in the VTubing niche, with one of the biggest arguments being that Gen AI helps reduce the financial barrier of entry substantially, given that high-quality reference sheets, for example, can be a hefty investment on its own, let alone model art, rigging, and other general channel assets, which, in a niche where the financial barrier of entry is often debated, pro-Gen AI folk point to Gen AI as what they interpret to be a solid way to reduce this barrier to allow more people into the niche. One other big argument from supporters is that since there's a huge anti-AI stigma in the community, particularly from freelance artists, Gen AI users often find it difficult to commission anyone for work on their models and/or assets, as the majority of artists in the VTubing community have anti-AI clauses, whether it's to feed their work into AI or just flat out refusing to work with those who use Gen AI to produce their own art. With Leaflit's project, Gen AI supporters find that the tool has enabled them access to furthering their potential careers as VTubers. Now, some argue that Gen AI shouldn't necessarily be used for full finalized results, but more so for brainstorming and prototyping ideas for designs. This kind of plays into the prior argument where, because of the large stigma against AI from the majority of artists, it becomes difficult to find someone who's willing to work with someone who uses Gen AI for drafting model and/or asset designs. And so, they hope for, at the very least, some form of tolerance towards design concepts being AI generated rather than finalized products being AI generated. The opposers. As for those who oppose Leaflit's project and the use of Gen AI in general, the overall sentiment is that this group favors supporting its artists and preserving the current artist-to-creator ecosphere. More specifically, and this generally pertains to anti-Gen AI as a whole, the primary argument is that the LLMs that generate the Gen AI models and assets had to scrape immense amounts of data to be trained for various tasks, and in the case of Gen AI art, scrape immense amounts of art from artists to be trained to generate art, which in the majority of cases hasn't been done with permission, and is just flat out theft, something that is viewed as overwhelmingly negative by opposers of Gen AI. As for the barrier of entry argument by Gen AI supporters, opposers argue that the barrier of entry is much lower than it was a few years ago, with the recent rise of low-cost pre-made and customizable models providing an opportunity to have good quality models without spending hundreds of dollars for a reference sheet, model art, and rigging. Now, there's also the whole legally gray area with Gen AI visuals particularly, as while training LLMs with copyrighted text has been deemed fair use, training LLMs with copyrighted artwork is still under contention as of this video, with a class action lawsuit against several companies pending and a trial scheduled for September 8th, 2026. The aftermath. Obviously, this isn't going to cause Leaflit's project to go kaput, and the project is still up and running as of this video. Discourse continues to be held about Gen AI in the VTubing community, where community members have discussed not just Gen AI art being or not being an issue, but also the rising usage of AI moderation for content creation platforms that hinders creators on both sides of the discourse due to being hit with anti-Gen AI filtration systems. Realistically, this discourse won't end anytime soon, especially with the rapid increase in Gen AI development. As with all my videos, do not harass anyone in or outside of this video.